My name is Tracy Kern, and I will be your navigator today as we venture down the rabbit hole of possibility. The Conscious Shift Network is part of Conscious Shift Magazine, an online magazine where new ideas are taking root for a changing world. You can find us online at consciousshiftmagazine.com, and you can join us on social media, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Find out what is conscious and shifting every day and going on in our community. I'd like to take a moment to thank the St. Petersburg Chamber of Commerce for giving us this space today. As Conscious Shift is a member of the St. Pete Chamber, and we do support local businesses, and we want to just thank them very much for giving us this space. So thank you, Chamber of Commerce. With me today is Afsani Nouri. And I had to write down what I'm going to tell you about Afsani because she's such a unique and cool conscious shifter. Afsani was born in Iran to one of the oldest and most influential families in the country. Growing up, she made a habit of challenging the cultural norms of her country. At the age of 20, her family moved to America, where she became an engineer, a holistic teacher, and a mother. Today, she is a master at handling change. Afsani is the founder of a nonprofit organization appropriately named Change Thrivers, awesome name, Shift Thrivers, Change Thrivers,
Right.
that helps women navigate change in a conscious and shifting way. So, thank you for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here.
I wanted to ask you first, because so many people don't know anything about the culture you came from. So I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Iran. I know that you left before the change where it got really difficult for women. I have a feeling that that has a lot to do with the idea of Change Thrivers and how you put that together.
My childhood was a little different than most because my family was well educated and well traveled, very wealthy, and non-practicing Muslims. So it allowed me a lot of opportunities that most other kids my age did not have. Because my father and mother did not follow with the norms, and they actually supported me in being different.
Wasn't your father a general?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did he get away with that? It would seem to me that that might be contradicting to what he did for a living.
It did not, because it was really had nothing to
It had nothing to do with
what
it.
he
Okay,
was doing.
okay.
But he wanted to make sure that I did not grow up believing some of the things about women as you're. So he would always tell me, Afsane, if you don't want to be suppressed or subject to men, you have to be able to take care of yourself financially. And the best way to do that is to have good education.
So
Very
he was a
different.
conscious shifter back before shifting was cool.
And my mother was very different as well. She did not, she was very good at all the social things, but did not necessarily, was limited by them.
Got it.
And so she and my father were very much equal in our home, and she was very much revered, and so I never saw in the home life the kinds of things that I saw outside.
That's really neat.
And that made a big difference.
It's like it created a whole matrix that was unto your own. Very, very cool.
Exactly.
So you came to America when you were
20.
20.
And that has a story.
That has a story.
Yes.
Okay. Culture shock. Oh, yes, I do know this story. I was reading that. Please tell. It's in
Right.
chapter 4 of your book, right? It is chapter 4 of your
I
book.
can remember somewhere in there is
Yes,
the story that although my parents were very open-minded and they told me that I could choose my own husband, I did not read the fine lines, the fine prints, which said within a certain limit. So I fell in love with somebody outside of my faith, outside of the socioeconomic level. And when I told my parents that I loved him, they said, well, no, you can't marry him. And what they were concerned about was, the best way to say it is like the 50s and 60s here, interracial marriages. I would not fit in either one of the groups if I got married. So their decision was to sell all their belongings and move the whole family to America.
But in the meantime, you bribed your guards
Oh,
to
yes.
help you meet your friend.
Yes.
I do. We read her books. They talk about once her parents found out about this, they hired a
Chauffeur.
a what?
A chauffeur.
A chauffeur. I
To
hired
take me back and forth
Yes,
to the school
to
and so on.
walk her to and from class. Well, she bribed them to let her see the guy she was in love with. I loved that. That was great. So.
And that goes to resistance that comes with change. You know, they
Oh, absolutely.
and it was not something that I wanted to do. And so there was a lot of resistance in all kinds of ways. And in the book, I talk a lot about resistance, which comes from feeling that you don't have any control. And so you try to find some sense of control in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, these little subtleties play. I mean, these subtleties are really the show. They really
Mhm.
are what's going on, even though we pretend, oh, it doesn't mean anything. They're everything.
Right.
They're everything. That's very
Right.
cool. So once you came to America, what next?
Well, because everybody came with me, I knew there was no going back, or at least anytime soon. So I realized that now I was in another world and I had to live in it. And
From your parents' perspective, though, did they kind of loosen up a little bit on who you could or couldn't marry, or?
at the time, I was kind of like, okay, if you don't want to, if you don't want me to marry him, that's fine, but I will not marry anybody else either. And I was only 20, so they were not in any rush, and they thought, oh well, you know, she's going to get used to whatever it is. And the fact was that I realized very quickly that I was given an opportunity to be in a world that was going to give me all kinds of things that would not have been open to me before.
Absolutely. Well, you,
And once I got through the, you know, the tears and all of that, it was, okay, this is where I am, and I need to make a life. And my choices really was to perish or not, and to actually thrive.
Very
So
cool.
I went to engineering school and started to create my American dream life.
she did say engineer. She is an engineer.
Reformed.
She is a reformed engineer. And what else did I have in here? An engineer and energy medicine practitioner.
Yes, well, you know, when you live as long as I have, you have a lot of times for moving around. And
Well, it just seems, what I love about that is, for me, energy medicine is so much about quantum physics and quantum possibility. And then you being an engineer, to me it's like it brings both sides of the coin into one, making it something that is the platform of navigating the in-between of the language.
Well, that's really, I think, what I bring in my work, is that I have the engineering, the black and white logic side.
Yes.
And then is the other side, which is the human side, the compassion side, which engineering school did not teach me. And I had to actually learn that without this, all the logic in the world is not going to cut it.
Right.
And so it's bringing the two together that was going to be the key to success in life.
Very cool. See, that algebra is important.
Yes, it is. Somewhere along the line, I realized that I achieved the American dream, but I lost myself. And so it was kind of going back and say, what is it that I gave up?
Yes.
And I gave up my femininity, I gave up my nationality, and I gave up big parts of myself. So the next big shift was reclaiming all of that and going into years of therapy and figuring out who I really am. And so in about 10 years ago, I decided that I was going to do something different with my life. And looking back at what the theme in my life has been, it was all about change, both in my organizational work and in my personal life. And that's what I could teach, that's what I could speak of. About a few months ago, as I have been reaching my 60th, I have been looking at most of my life is now in the rear.
Yes.
And so what is left of this?
Well, it depends. You could live to be 120.
No.
Okay.
We're
moving
very
on.
clear about
Moving
that.
on.
That I would want to make a difference in the world, conscious difference. And so I decided that Change Thrivers could become Change Thrivers Enrichment Center. And that is what I am
Very cool.
applying for a nonprofit. And it is to teach women and their families life skills, the kinds of things that I did not learn
Okay.
in any school, or they don't teach it anywhere. But it is about women putting themselves in the agenda of their lives, to be able to say no when no is the right answer. There is a whole set of workshops around interactions with
Yes.
others and communications, and a whole bunch of them about families, where I have taken all the kinds of team development and leadership development work that I used to do, or still do, for companies, and translate it into a family dynamic.
So you've consciously shifted corporate rhetoric to use it in everyday life
Yes.
with the background of an engineer and a culture that is completely unlike ours.
Yes.
How awesome. Consciously shifting the community for a whole new way. I love it. I love it. I don't mean to be too cheesy, but I love it. I love
Thank
it.
you.
All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Thank you. Afsani is the founder of Change Thrivers, a nonprofit organization that helps women in the face of transformational change. And on that note, tell us, what does transformational change mean?
In a transformational change, the reality as you know it ends. And the person that goes into it, changes totally in order to survive it and hopefully to thrive in it. And if I was going to give one advice, it would be that this kind of change has a cycle. And the first part of this cycle is the breakdown of your reality. That is a time like an earthquake. You cannot be deciding on what's going to happen next, and you are just trying to survive. And to survive, you need to take care of yourself, pay attention to your feelings, use all the support system that you have, and know that this will end. But unless you do the work of your emotions and understanding
Yes.
that, you cannot shift to the second phase, which is the thriving, which is building a new life the way you would want
Enjoying the work that you've done. It kind of sounds like venturing down the rabbit hole.
it. It is. It is.
Thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to learn more about Change Thrivers, and if you are going through a transformational change right now, you want to get Afsani's book, Change Thrivers. And how do we find the book, and how do we find you?
My website is changethrivers.com. The book is in there, and
Okay,
you can purchase
you
it.
can purchase it online.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you so much for consciously shifting with us today. We look forward to seeing you next month as we venture down the rabbit hole of possibility. My name is Tracy Kern, and thank you for shifting.